Okay, I believe officially we are live right now. So I'm just gonna go verify that real quick on our Facebook page, which is super exciting. Yep, we're doing it. We're doing it. It's finally working. I want everyone to know that this is round two of the interview. The first time we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we finally got this squared away. And I'm so excited to be interviewing Dr. Laura Hickman. Laura Hickman, who's getting her doctorate at the moment, recent entrepreneur, started her own practice in the last year, sharing all the advice. And as your friend, new friend, and as I believe you to be an incredible mentor, especially questions regarding mental health, regarding the nurse practitioner. I can't
Awesome.
wait to just ask you everything in the world. So I get carried away. I know it. But before we get started, can you give us just share with the audience like who are you? What are you about?
Yeah, that's a great
Tell us
question.
why I know you're amazing. That's it. Just share with everyone.
Well, loaded question, Krish. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
I have a story that just kind of started with didn't know what I wanted to do with myself, went into nursing because I didn't know what to do with myself. I had some people along the way that kind of tried to direct me, my dad included, saying, "No, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that." Um,
Parents doing it.
did candy striping in the hospital years ago, and loved the connection with people. And so that's who I am. I love connections with people. I love helping people. I love mentoring students. I love um, just constantly growing in my life. And so that involves doing things differently all the time. So an evolving
Mm-hmm.
change is probably maybe my motto right now.
Evolving change. That is probably I would, if I had to rank top five mottos for entrepreneurship, it would be constantly growing, constantly evolving.
Yeah,
Um,
love it. Love it.
what have you, I guess, in terms of kind of how you came about creating your own practice, what's the quick backstory on that?
So I started as an NP, graduated in 2013, got licensing early 2014, started in community mental health right away.
Mm,
Um, did that in Phoenix, Arizona, and have been here since.
mm,
Um, that terrific experience. Okay, I worked with psychiatrists, I worked with physician assistants, I worked with nurses, case managers, social workers. I mean, there's just a whole team approach, right? So that was great experience for me because I had other people there. Um, and at the same time, if I wanted somebody in therapy or I wanted somebody to go check on them in their home, I could reach out to these team members. So that was how I kind of built myself as kind of wanting to be this well rounded provider, knowing that all of the patient's needs were met. And so I learned that through my initial experience. Then,
ah,
does that make sense? Or is that
yeah.
kind of confusing?
No, that made perfect sense, right? So you
Okay.
started in community mental health, had a phenomenal experience. It was a collaborative approach, and you
Yes.
were there. It is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then I said, gosh, how come our appointment times keep getting shorter and shorter and shorter? And how come I can't spend time with patients like I want to? So,
Huh.
how can I change that? Okay, I'm going to do my own thing. That's the only way I have control over that, right? So,
Yeah.
that's how I said I'm going to go out on my own. And I'm, because my love is caring for people and making sure they get this well rounded, balanced experience. So, that's the birth of the idea for the entrepreneurship, my own gig, calling my own times of how long I can see the patient, and yep, that's how
That's
I.
amazing. And what's the name of your practice? Because I love it, and I just want to hear you say it.
Thank you so much. It's Centric Behavioral Health. Yes.
So with Centric, and I think that story really resonates, right? It's it's to be honest, it's that classic entrepreneur birth, which is I was in a job in a corporate company and I hated the lack of control. And the fact is that they were pushing a certain standard on you, whether it was less time, more money, as opposed to the care it takes to develop,
Yeah.
to treat your patients. And in mental health, like from what I understand of it, which is very limited, it's very difficult to predict the time it takes to serve a patient.
Yes,
Um,
extremely. That not
mhm.
every individual fits in a box of 7 minutes or however minutes you get.
7 minutes? I was thinking like 30. 7?
Here it's 7 minutes. For mental health care, it varies, ranging from 30 minutes to an hour and a half if you're really lucky, but that's very, very rare to see a patient for an hour and a half for the first time visit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not
So
everybody fits in that box, right?
yeah, I mean, especially with like with just the prevalence of I don't necessarily know if there's like I think mental health is gaining more popularity and being more recognized as I feel uncomfortable speaking to it, but can you help me with this one? Like
Yes.
I think you know what I'm trying to say.
So the stigma out there is,
Yes, thank you. That's the word, stigma.
I thank you for bringing that up because this is why I love you, Krish, because you get it. You totally get that mental health isn't just like a crazy person out there.
Hmm.
It's not about that at all. It's about what struggles do people have in life? Are they fighting with their employers and their parents and their boyfriends and their kids all the time? Well, if that's really getting in the way, hey, maybe there's some anxiety, maybe there's some depression. But that's how I like to kind of normalize and lessen the stigma of mental health is, hey, what's getting in the way of doing life? Because that's really what it's about.
Hmm. And I love that line, like doing life right? Because, whether it's coping mechanisms, whether it's, like trauma and overcoming, it
Yeah.
is very much, it requires the time. And, the fact that you have your own practice at, Centric now, what's been a struggle you've had? Like obviously, you talk about finding patients or whatever it is, but like, what's that big struggle that you had in the beginning?
Oh, gosh. There's so many. How much time?
Five. Give me three. Give us three, and we'll knock them out. We'll knock them out.
Okay. So I'm going to use an example of something that just happened last night. I needed to, and this is an extreme story, okay? This doesn't happen often, but it's one of those things in your private practice where it doesn't happen very often. And when you're at a facility, you can click on forms, their forms folder, and pull up a form and, fill out what you need to get somebody admitted to the hospital if you need to. So last night, on my own, I was like, oh my goodness, I don't have that form. So then it's the extra time and the kind of, oh, how come I wasn't prepared for this? I should have known that that was, a piece of preparation for the business. But it's kind of some of those things that come up and you're like, okay, I need to get a handle on this policy, or I need to make this new policy because this other one isn't working. But the great thing about it is while there's challenges, again, you have the control as the entrepreneur of saying, okay, I get to make this policy better because it's not working for my clients. So I get to rewrite it and make sure that, it flows with the philosophy of the clinic and what's best needed for my patients. So, I don't have to fit them in the box anymore.
That's awesome, right? And it's very much kind of like you can prepare as much as you can, right? For example, before we really hired a large staff, we didn't have an employee handbook. But one of our rock stars on our team, Madison, she basically sat us down and was like, "You need an employee handbook. People need to know what the rules are." And I'm like, "I don't know what the rules are. Like, it's normal rules."
Yeah.
It's with your case, it's like, this is a form that you can only have so much foresight. And sometimes when you first start a practice in private, like some of the private practice entrepreneurs I've met, they can get wrapped up into, all right, everything needs to be perfect before I can even advertise to have a patient, let alone get a patient, right? But advertise it. And
Yeah.
I think it's almost better, like, to have that struggle and that stress and like, my God, I didn't do this versus having done in the beginning and wasted your time in the beginning.
Yeah. That's why I still love that word evolving change. I mean, it can mean two different things. Change can happen one time, but if you commit yourself to saying, I want to make this the best that it can be, and so that requires change, multiple changes over time. So, yeah, that's.
I'm almost certain I'm gonna steal that quote from you, evolving change. Like I just like I'm letting you know, but it's being stolen as I'm taking it.
All right, steal.
But okay, so you said something really interesting. You said something about the form, and you wanted to represent the philosophy of the clinic.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of nurse practitioners, especially considering going into the, tell me what your philosophy of your clinic is, and why it's important to have one, right? Which is essentially equivalent to a mission statement,
Right.
right? A value base.
So, I'm still kind of working on a tagline, if you will. I know that sounds very business-like, but
Yeah.
if I could make it up right now, it would be something like caring for people in a different way. And I know that sounds, I don't know, maybe it's kind of cliche, I don't know, but that is deep in my heart. And so I want, when people come to Centric Behavioral Health, to have a completely different experience than what they've had sitting in the waiting room, and then getting just a few minutes of the provider's time, and then leaving the clinic more frustrated than when they walked in the door. That cannot happen at my clinic. It can't. So that's my commitment to my clients. And so that's why I just really, really, really enforce it takes extra time to get to know the patient, to know how they're doing life, to know what their struggles are in life, and to normalize the whole thing. Because look, nobody is any different than anybody else. We have more or less challenges in different areas of our lives. So that's what we strive to do at Centric Behavioral Health, is make it a completely different experience for them.
I love that. And there was like a visceral almost like facial reaction you had a few seconds ago. People going to a clinic and leaving more frustrated than when they arrive. And you said that can't happen. Like that cannot happen, And it's that to me, literally in that like 3 seconds, is like seeing your passion for it, right?
Oh.
And I love that. Love that. So for a new NP coming into thinking about opening their practice, right? They maybe they practice for about 3 to 5 years. They feel comfortable. They know their stuff, and they're like, you know what? I want to be an entrepreneur. I've always wanted to. I want to control my earning potential, or I want to be able to treat patients in the way I want to.
Yeah.
The question is, what is one business specific function that you wish you knew when you started your clinic that you didn't realize would be as hard? Now, you know that's a very specific question. Examples could be like, I didn't realize something about marketing and bringing patients in. I didn't realize about the whole payment aspect of things, or whatever it is.
So you hit the nail on the head with the marketing. I have no clue. I've tried a few things on my own just by reading some articles. I've tried hiring somebody. I've tried just, kind of various things. When you're starting out, obviously you don't have a big budget for marketing. And sometimes marketing takes, somewhat of a big chunk of your revenue in the beginning, especially. So, gosh, I'm stuck between how much do I put into marketing to build my business, or do I just kind of bide my time and hope that word of mouth grows? Because I hear both sides. No, you got to do the marketing to get the patients in, and then the word of mouth can happen. So I know nothing about it. I struggle with it constantly, and I wish that I would have had that plan. That's one thing that I would have done differently.
Hmm.
I've
That
had,
is that is incredible. The reason I say that is because um, we actually put together an ebook. It's this like behemoth on a marketing automation system on, sorry, a marketing operating system for private practices. And there are a ton of private practices that are still basically surviving on the tactics they used in the 90s on referrals, on physician network, provider
yeah,
networks,
yes,
and by basically kind of putting up a sign and hoping people come to their clinic,
yeah,
right? And it's kind of like this, like cross your fingers and like what's gonna happen sort of thing. And and then you see a lot of practices adopting that sort of like, okay, what do businesses do in 2018? You
mhm,
know, and how do they grow on social media? What are they promoting on Instagram? Why does a private practice like need to be on Instagram? You know, but
right.
I have a buddy that like he is so active on Snapchat that he brings in patients on Snapchat, and you're like, what? And I said that to a physician. He's like, look, I'm 48 years old, right? He's like, I'm not getting, like, I didn't go to medical school to go on Snapchat. And I'm like, you know, that's the way, it's crazy. That's so interesting. What would you have done differently for that marketing? Like, how would you have done it?
So I'm going to share a big mistake of mine.
Please.
Um,
Oh man, I don't know, like
yeah,
start with this.
huge mistake. So I was the person in the 90s that said, hey, I have a genius idea. Even though I know nothing about marketing, I'm going to try to do it on my own. And I'm going to make postcards. And I'm going to send those out to clinics. I'm going to send them, okay? So, yes, that's how they're all going to get my business name and my phone number and all this, right? Okay, so I had some emails from therapists because I sent them mostly to therapists and, yeah, pediatricians' offices and wherever. And I got some feedback and just said, hey, I really appreciate knowing you're out there. However, I'm not going to refer to just anyone. So when I make a referral to somebody, it's got to be somebody that I know their philosophy, that I know how they're going to treat my patients because I'm on the line by referring, uh, yeah, to you. So I don't know you. Would you like to go grab some coffee or whatever? And I've done that numerous times, and I met terrific therapists that way. But as
That's
you
awesome.
yeah, as you know, there's only so many hours in the day and so many Saturday 7 a.m. coffee meetings that you can have, because you're trying to run your business and
Yeah.
to get patients in. So while I thought I was just such a genius at doing that, yeah, mistake noted.
Wow. Interesting. Do you mind if and it's okay if like you don't remember or you don't want to share it. How many postcards did you send out?
I sent out greater than 500.
And how many appointments or how many like coffee things did you have?
I've had 4 coffee meetings.
Oh damn, that is okay. That conversion, I think it's oh man, my mom would be so upset that I can't do mental math right now. I think that's
It's a
I
pretty
think that's like 0.8%, 1%.
yeah.
But that's solid. Look, it's all about the attempt, right? And again, um, one of the things we talk about a lot at NPHub is that sort of like that hustle and the grit. Sometimes you have to do things. It might not be the smartest way, right? Postcards aren't objectively, it's probably not the smartest way. But the fact is that it did lead to 4 connections, and that's how you develop your referral network. And while it wasn't the most efficient, it worked, and that's awesome, right? And sometimes nurse practitioners, providers, um, I'm sure you probably a million more than I do. They'll get caught up in trying to do things perfectly when you just need to do something.
Yes. Yes. Move forward. Constantly move forward. Otherwise you're stagnant. There's very few things I believe that are black and white except for either you're moving forward or you're stagnant. It's just like this was my dad's business thing that he always tried to teach me is if you're not constantly doing something different to add income or to change things up so you are changing your annual salary basically, then you're staying the same and you're actually going backwards because what you get paid at your facility job doesn't count for inflation anymore. So every year, if you're still at that same number for your salary, then yeah, it's stagnant. It's not moving forward.
That is 100% right. You know, it's very much like that. You know, you're going forward or you're going backward, you're staying stagnant. And I think I read a quote recently that if you can adopt that philosophy, it almost viscerally creates that change in you, saying like, I have to continually try new things, learn every day.
Yes.
Because if you're just doing to do and you're not, and a lot of times it's just about self-awareness, right? It's just about understanding what it is that you're learning or you're growing from, as opposed to like thinking you're doing the same thing every day, but you're really getting better.
Yeah.
You know?
Had I connected with NPHub early on, how would that, just tell me how that would have helped the nurse practitioner with their business? What kind of ideas would they have gathered?
I think so. I'm a huge fan of giving everything we do away. I've always done that, and I remember. I think, Laura, did we connect? I think it was like New Year's Day or the day after New Year's, and I was in Thailand. And didn't we talk? Like, did we like talk on the phone for like 15 minutes about like how to market? Something like that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
definitely.
So that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember that. I remember that. It was so hot out there. Okay, so basically, I think if we had connected, because it's not like a service offering. Hey, we'll do our marketing for you. We're not there yet. We want to be there at some point. And really, if nurse practitioners tell us, like, if there's 10 of them that say, like, hey, you know marketing, your team knows it, I want you guys to do it for us, we'll look into it, right? It's just like go, what do your customers want? Our customers, our clients right now, but they want our clinical rotation, so that's what we serve them with. That's why we're developing the app. But for the nurse practitioner that wants to open up their own practice, I would sit down with each and every one of them for about 45 minutes and lay out a go-to-market strategy, which is what you were saying. Like, okay, you have a great idea, which is awesome. What I tell other entrepreneurs when I consult with them is, you have a great idea, so does 45 other people, right? And they probably have the same idea as you. It's quality of execution, and it's how do you do it. So for a go-to-market for a nurse practitioner, I would run campaigns on social media, on Facebook, and I would show you how to do that, which is basically outreach-based, right? So take where you are, where your clinic is, and do a 50-mile radius, and you only want to talk to people in that area, and you want to really understand your ideal customer profile, which is a patient profile, which is, again, I don't know, but maybe 30 to 65-year-olds who maybe have certain interests such as these sports, and they are empty nesters, hypothetically, and you can target for that, and you want to send messaging directly to them, right? In the same way for our students, like, we want to talk to students who are in the locations where we can help them with. So we'll target Chicago, Atlanta, LA, Dallas. Won't target Minneapolis, for example, because we just can't service that area, right? So driving that, and then, I think that's really important. But it's not like when you're on your own starting out, the biggest thing is doing one or two things well, not doing 50 things, right? And even we make that mistake. We have a staff of 10 now, and we just came out of like a 2-month little, not like down thing, but like almost kind of like a valley of trying to take on too many different things and realizing that, wow, we need to standardize and strip what everybody does, from myself down to anyone in our organization. We're doing too much. And for the nurse practitioner who wants to open up their own practice, my hunch is that they're doing too much.
I love that. Love that. It's the name of the book is escaping me, but your thoughts have kind of summarized that book. Is focus on what you do well, and that's going to, so your strengths. I think it's strength finders, maybe. I don't know. But focus on your strengths and do those well. Don't focus on what you're not doing well, because sometimes, I mean, we all don't have all of those talents. That's why we have connections like you, Krish, so we can say, hey, I'm really bad at marketing. What do I do here? Or, hey, I want to help a student out. So how can you help me with that? And so it's definitely connecting with people that can help you with those things where you're not as strong. And then just,
Yeah.
yeah, really, really showcasing those things that you do well, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And again, like I haven't thought about it specifically. Like if a nurse practitioner came up to me and said, "Hey, give me like 5 pieces of advice for opening up my practice." But one of the big things I always recommend to entrepreneurs is don't be afraid of partnerships, right? I think a lot of people want to do it by themselves because there's novelty and the sexiness and the struggle of self-made. It's actually it actually doesn't exist. There's no such thing as being self-made, right? You always have mentors, you always have guidance, and for a nurse practitioner, I would see if they had a potential partnership, whether it was like a short-term one of like a 6 months to a year, or a long-term engagement with either another company or like a marketing person or like a business-minded person, and say, hey, I'm going to do the service, right? Essentially, I'm going to be the operations person in the company. I'm going to do the work, right? Because you're
Yeah.
going to see the patients and you love that, right? Let like nurse practitioners, providers, physicians, they love to help their patients. Like, let
Yes.
them do that. And then
Yes.
find yourself a partner who understands that what do you actually need through your door? Tell me your patient that you want, right? Like, for example, if you, as a psych NP, you have a special, interest in working with ADHD, bring me those people. I want that. Like that gives me fulfillment. Bring me that. And then
Yes.
have your marketing team or your business-minded sort of sales and marketing department execute on that initiative, right?
So
Um,
you
and yeah, so
relations is the best way to go.
yeah, I think that's really important. And I think that yeah, partnerships work. They work really well. I myself am one of them, right? In our organization, I very much operate with the visionary role. People will tell you that I have 20 ideas and one of them is good. Literally, one of them is good. But in terms of like designing and operations, I can't do it. I'm like, "Ooh, I'll do that right now," or I have like my head in 15 different things.
Yeah.
So that's why I have a partner who does that effectively. That's why I have a team around me that like they're like, no, structure. This is important. Stop doing this. Stop bothering us. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know,
That's a
um, and
great point.
you know, in your business, I forget. Do you operate with cash basis or do you work with billers? How does that work?
I do work with a cash basis, so I
Okay.
made that decision consciously.
Hmm.
I know I do still have my hand in community mental health, so I do that 1 day a week.
Okay.
But as we started talking about in the beginning, really the structure of the appointment time is not because of the provider, and most likely it's not because of the organization. It's because of the payer source is, funding less and less and less. And that changes
Oh.
time
So
from
it's like
mental health.
it's an insurance game. It's not like
It's totally
okay.
an insurance. So if I want to be different, I had to consciously say, I can't, because they really are the ones that are dictating what you can prescribe, how long you can spend with patients. Um, and so,
I think it might have cut out for like 3 seconds right there. And I
okay.
think that sentence was so powerful. Can you repeat that one more time? Where you said I can't.
I just, with the insurance thing, I just said to myself, I can't limit myself to um, prescribing only what they provide on their formulary. I can't put the patients in a box and only see them for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And so that's why I made the conscious decision to just take cash.
Hmm. Okay, that makes sense. I think that's phenomenal. Something you just touched on right there, very briefly, was you're still in community mental health 1 day a week,
Yes.
and that leads me down the path of with nurse practitioners wanting to open up their own practice, or even if they want to do anything as a side hustle. Um, you don't need to jump in feet first, right? You
Right.
can ease your way in and focus on your practice 2 or 3 days a week, maybe take an income hit, but be able to survive effectively, right? Pay off student loans, pay for your kids in school, whatever it is. How did you manage that sort of transition to like 4 days, or I don't know, like 4 or 5 days in your Centric versus 1 day in community mental health?
Yeah. So that was my plan, to slowly stop the 5 days a week at the community mental health, and then 4 days, and then 3 days, and then two. In December, I had an unfortunate thing happen, and we should talk about that at some point with the 1099 contractor work, because that is of high importance to the NP who decides to go that route. But
Okay.
anytime you aren't an employee, so they can say, oh, look, we found a physician's assistant that can do this job for half of what you do. So therefore, I'm sorry, we don't need your services anymore. So that's what happened to me in December. And so
Wow.
yeah. So January, I said, oh my goodness, I'm 2 days a week at the community mental health, and I had been supplementing as a 1099 contract worker for a different facility. So when that dropped off, then I said, okay, my only option is to go feet first, and open up a practice and just see what I can do. Ideally it would have worked the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 days a week until you start to build your private practice up. However, I've just had, it's been a learning process, because now I have 2 offices, and I'm housed in with 2 neuropsychologists, and so that connection happened. And so that's kind of been a natural transition too. So I split my private practice time between those offices, but I still enjoy the community mental health 1 day a week, and I want to stay involved in that. That's the downside to owning your own practice, is you have nobody else to run things by. It's you. So if you, we all need those stress releases after a difficult day of high needs patients or whatever had happened that day, and we need somebody to just kind of decompress with, who gets it.
Right.
And so that part is lacking. And so that's why the connections with and partnerships, I think that's why I really, that resonated with me when you said that, when you were talking about the partnerships. Even if it is somebody that has other control of your business, or as a partnership, then you can at least say, all right, at least the marketing part is handled. I can just focus on my patients, and I don't have to worry about the marketing, the income coming in, all of the things that go into
Right.
private.
And that support is there, right? I think us having a support system, whether it's a partner or it's a team behind you, or for maybe another provider that you work with part-time, or even again, like one of the benefits, like we're in a co-working space because you bring businesses together that like they share function, they share essentially space, so that way, like if you work by yourself, you can effectively kind of walk down the hall and knock on someone's window, even if they're in a different business, you guys can talk, right?
Yeah.
That isolation. Yeah, when I started my first company, instead of helping NPs finding clinical placements, we were helping MD students. And I literally worked out of my apartment, and it was very isolating and alone.
Yeah.
The first 6 months I remember just like I'm a very social person, so to be literally by yourself and not leave your home for like 2 days because you work and then you eat at home and then you work and you eat at home, it's depressing. So that is amazing, and that's something like my next question to you is what's a piece of advice opening up your own practice? And I'm going to jump in and say my piece of advice is figure out who you're going to lean on for support. It sucks in the beginning and it's hard, but it's worth it now.
Yes.
What's your piece of advice?
I have to agree with you. I think that's the number one thing, because if you look at your own life, like your friends are, who you can lean on when things are stressful in your personal life, right? So that correlates to the business world too. I used to work in public health where a lot of us were very like-minded. We were, it was so great. We almost had like a team little huddle in the morning, just of like, hey, how you doing? You know, checking in with everybody. And that is so powerful because that gives you the energy to then give to others. And I think it's absolutely needed. And it's something that, I need to work on because it can be very isolating, especially if, and I just caution any nurse practitioner that solely wants to do telemedicine. While it's terrific and yeah, it's great to be able to work from your own home, that there is a downside to that because you don't have the person that you can just walk down the office corridor to and knock on their door and sit down and chat for a second. People are busy, and so it's not as easy as picking up the phone anymore. I do have quite a few other NPs that, while I don't talk about specific cases necessarily, I can say, oh my gosh, this day, and they get it, So I would just caution the beginning NP that they would have at least the experience and a lot of outside connections before they do any kind of telemedicine.
Wow, that's awesome advice. Right?
Yeah.
Talking about telemedicine, talking about developing that support structure, very huge.
Yeah.
Very huge. So there's 3 questions I know I need to ask you.
Yes.
And then there's one you mentioned about the 1099. Now, NPs are always posting in Facebook groups about, is it better to be a W-2 or a 1099?
Right.
Hit us with this knowledge bomb because it's really important.
Okay. So this is the short and sweet of it, okay? When you start working for a facility as an employee, then you are a W-2 person. They pay for part of the taxes, for Social Security, and some of those other things. They also give you benefits. Thus, your salary is, lower technically than what it would be if you're a 1099 contract worker. If you're a 1099 contract worker, you are not an employee of that facility. So you have your own company, basically. I started a PLLC, and then that's how I did all my income through, because then you have to pay your own taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So working with an accountant is extremely important if you're a 1099 worker. But you do, there's always the trade-off, the risks and benefits of each thing. The benefits to the W-2 is you have insurance, you have a job as an employee, and so there's certain regulations and rules that go with that. And then as the 1099 worker, you're your own person. And so, yeah, you can kind of get different, you can kind of mold like some of your employment towards what you think is best. So maybe you want to do 2 days a week at community mental health and 3 days a week at a nursing home. Fine, you can do that as a 1099. But, you won't have any benefits. So there's a huge difference there. And then you don't have, again, kind of the engagement of other employees, so other providers. And yeah, if you're in the facility, you might be able to kind of connect, but it is just a little different, because you are kind of calling some of your own shots with the 1099.
So then I would ask then 2 questions to follow up on that. As a new graduate nurse practitioner, what would you recommend going with?
So I started as a W-2, and I think that's a great way to start. Because as a new MP, you're going into a facility not knowing what to expect. I mean, luckily I had no expectations because I didn't have anything to compare it to. So my first job as an MP was, okay, so I followed the rules and followed the guidance of the supervisors and managers and things like that. Quickly do you see as an NP that having a supervisor that is not a provider is a problem. So, yes.
Okay.
So, because they don't have the same philosophies as you, nor do they prescribe medications. which is where a great amount of your liability comes from as a provider, is prescribing those medications, right? So if I'm working underneath a social worker or some other type of mental health provider, and this is in no way any kind of diss against them at all. It's just solely the fact of when you are supervised by somebody that is not doing the same job as you, it can create some conflict. I was trying to manage patients in the best way that I thought I knew how as a provider, and so that doesn't align with psychotherapy always, because there's a different component to it, right? So when I kind of figured that out, I thought, some of this is kind of going against how I feel patients should be cared for.
Like your own value set.
Yeah, I don't feel like somebody should tell me what meds I can and can't prescribe if I'm legally allowed to in that state, okay? So I'm not talking about doing anything illegal or, outside of your scope. I'm just talking about, following your scope and how you want to provide services. And if that doesn't align with somebody who is kind of dictating your practice, that creates such great inner conflict. I mean, because you're like, oh, now I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall, and going to work is no longer passionate. I had the care for the patients, but I wanted something different. And so while I wasn't quite ready to go out on my own, I did want to have some level of freedom. And so then I said, okay, I'm going to do the 1099 then. I'm going to have.
Okay, so that was a really good story to kind of draw that back in, right? When you want that flexibility and that freedom, go with the 1099. When you want that more stable security, go with the W-2. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate you sharing that. I try to make a note to make sure we segment that exact question, because so many nurse practitioners have that question. And a lot of NPs have the next two questions for you, which, the next two ones, which I think are really big. When you're in school, right? So let's go back, or even now, right? In your program right now, in your team, you have your personal life, trying to live a semblance of it while you're busy. You're running your own practice. You're still working one day a week at the community mental health center. And you're in school managing work, and I'm assuming in your DNP you probably have a clinical component as well. What's a tip you have on getting through school for the BSN to the MSN degree, or the BSN to the DNP now that they're starting to implement that more?
Okay.
Just a tip of advice for the student that's struggling.
I got a big one. And I wish I would have followed this, okay? But anxiety is high in school, right? Anxiety, especially as an NP, is I got to be the best. I got to have A's. I got to do this right. I got to I got to go above and beyond. No, you don't. You have to, have a balance of it, because again, the anxiety is naturally high just because you're in school. So you have this, kind of additional pressure. You got a lot of finances that are kind of pushing you to do the good things, because school is a lot of money. You have a family that's maybe made some changes for you because you wanted to go back to school. So there's a lot of factors that play into that anxiety. Don't let it take over and tell you that you have to have the best of the grades. In the end, when you go for your job interview, they're not going to ask you, or I hope they don't ask you, did you get A+ or A's in every single class when you were an NP? Now, I'm not advocating to just slough it off, but give yourself a break and just say, you know what, this week has been really hard, so I might not be able to put as much energy into this project or studying for this test as I could other weeks. I'm going to give myself a break on it. Life happens, and so if I don't do as well on this test, oh well, there's other ways I can make it up for other weeks that I have alternative energy. So it's just Yeah, just really give yourself a break on not being perfectionistic about it.
That's phenomenal. I love that. It reminds me so much of something I notice a lot in across my team, across just a lot of people in general. It's learning how to be nice to yourself. I think a lot of people are just really mean to themselves.
Yeah.
Like they like their negative self-talk really just spirals down a bad place. And figuring out how to talk to yourself better, accepting yourself, loving yourself is so underrated. I honestly, I don't know how to instill that in people that I meet and I see when I see them struggling with it. But that's amazing advice. Give yourself a break and understand life happens.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, I love what you just said there. I mean, that is, yeah, the negative self-talk will completely change our day into a horrible one if we allow it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I used to be the worst at it. You could ask like my current partner. Man, when I was like 23, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, I'm not that old. And I remember going through this breakup, and I was telling him about it, and I would just spiral, right? Like my self-worth was in the fucking toilet, and it was intense. But he was like, dude, look at what you're telling yourself. If you like what you tell yourself is true. Whether you tell yourself you can do something or you can't do something, it's all true.
Yeah.
And you work on it, and sometimes things still like bog you down. For example, yesterday I woke up the day before yesterday. I said I was gonna run in the morning. I woke up and yesterday morning I was like, I'm not gonna run. For the first half hour, I'm like, man, you know what? I'm gonna have a bad day today because I didn't run in the morning. And then like you learn how to control it and flip it, and that sort of talk is important. And anxiety is so the same.
Yeah, our thoughts are our reality. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it is.
Oh man, see, I'm gonna steal that too. Hold on. The first one is evolving change, and then thoughts equal reality. Math equations. All right. So the next question, last one I have for you. If you have any for me, I would love to answer. Well, we have the time. Is overcoming self-doubt. As a new NP, you graduate, you went through school. Nowadays especially, it's a lot of e-learning programs. So you go through e-learning, pass your boards, you struggle with getting credentialed because no one tells you it takes 3 or 4 months to do it. And boom, you start seeing your own patients and you're like, shit, I'm not prepared. So many NPs struggle with job satisfaction, happiness, quality of life, insert X, Y, or Z the first year or two when they graduate. How do you overcome self-doubt?
I have the golden ticket for that. Okay, because I didn't know this at first.
Okay.
So here's what I want them to tell themselves. If a patient comes in to see 5 providers at the same time with the same story, all 5 providers will have a different diagnosis and thus prescribe a different medication for that patient. Does that mean it's wrong? No. As long as you are using evidence-based practice, you are, and that's where a good, as long as you know that you're doing a good history, a good evaluation. So in my world, it's a psychiatric evaluation. For people in primary care, I'm sure it's like a new patient intake appointment. As long as you're asking the questions that pertain most to your patient and what they're struggling with, you just can't go wrong. So I don't care what the 4 other persons said. They might have said, oh, no, it was PTSD, or no, it was just generalized anxiety, or no, it wasn't that at all, it was depression. Then you start self-doubting, right? You're like, well, all these people that have had like 5-10 years of experience came up with different diagnosis for this person. How come I came up with XYZ diagnosis? I don't understand that. I must not have done something right. And that's where you're wrong. As long as you're solely focused on the patient, you're using evidence-based practice medicine, and you are getting a good, thorough evaluation, then you can't go wrong. And then you just have to defend yourself and just say, no, this is why I did it. And providers need to do that anyways because of legalities. So as long as you can defend yourself in your charting and in your assessment and say, this is why I picked this medication, it was based on these symptoms that this patient told me about, then it really, you can't go wrong. So just always keep in the back of your mind that somebody else is always going to have a different way of doing it, a different diagnosis, a different medication choice, and you just have to tell yourself that, you know, you're following evidence-based guidelines, and that's how you prescribe.
That's phenomenal.
You can't go wrong.
That's amazing, right? And accepting that, like, you know, you can diagnose someone 5 different ways.
5 different ways. Yep. Totally.
So,
Yeah.
that I'm sure is going to be incredibly. I hope the nurse practitioner that graduates and is like, oh my God, I have no idea what to do. Because literally, you hear about them, right? Like, they're on these Facebook forums that we're a part of, and they're posting like, you know, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm scared, I'm stressed, I have this, and following that piece of advice is just follow your education, follow your training, evidence-based work, and you know,
and remember everything. So what I did, and this is a tip for the new ones, because I know it is different in primary care, and I understand that. So they have a different set of, you know, for antibiotics, you're not going to give 5 different antibiotics for one diagnosis. So their set is a little bit different. But I am going to tell you that I had an open tab with, it's called UpToDate. It's a site that I use all the time. I use it for patient education. I use it if I forget what something is FDA approved for, and I use it while the patient is sitting right there. Please, please, please use that instead of a book right in front of the patient. I don't know how many times I have had a patient come to me and say they saw a provider that just opened a book. And while I appreciate that they didn't just, you know, guess at the top of their head, it just creates a little bit of a level of distrust between you and the patient when they're wondering why you're looking in a book. So a way more discreet way to do it is to have that open tab on your computer and have it to UpToDate or, you know, whatever you use as kind of the latest evidence-based practice, and then just type it in while you're talking to your patient. And then you can say, okay, that's what I thought. So great, right here I see that it's FDA for this and whatever.
No, that sort of thing of just it's searching for validation, right? How you overcome self-doubt is by designing games where you can validate yourself and win those games, and then you naturally boost your confidence.
Absolutely. Another
awesome.
To that, I hope that people recognize how important it is to have the preceptor. And so hopefully that's kind of a natural transition into NPHub for you, Krish, because having a good preceptor who is willing to say, look, let's just kind of make up a case study here and talk about what you might prescribe for this patient, or what you might do, or what does the evidence-based practice say? Then you have a good indication of where that student is and what they need to learn. And so then it's up to that preceptor to say, okay, we need a little bit more work on FDA approvals for adolescents in SSRIs or whatever the case might be. But it's really, that preceptor is so important. And so please share your knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that, you know, we see a lot of, where students, because of just the nature of finding preceptors among nurse practitioner programs, you have preceptors that get so burned out from taking on students. They're saying that students are preparing well enough for their rotation themselves. It's honestly, it's a mess. Is the best way to describe it, because it's a cluster where you're taking, you know, essentially increasing programs over and over, enrollments are skyrocketing. And if you want students to have a one-on-one preceptor ratio or two-on-one preceptor ratio, that means you need as many preceptors as you have students, which is just impossible.
Right.
Doesn't make sense, right? So what we see are students that are learning to thrive and grow really well in study groups across like 3-to-1 ratios. Like, you have 3 students, 4 students with one preceptor, alternate days, and then one day a week they can meet and do case studies together, right? And like that sort of learning, and it makes sense. Like, it's literally it's taking like group project dynamics that you learn in undergrad and in business school and in different programs now, and it's applying it to your healthcare education. And as someone that's not, like, I don't have an NP education, so I can't speak to what you learn at, like, in school.
Right.
What I can say is figuring out case studies and creating scenarios sounds
Yeah.
to be very effective.
Yes.
You know, and some of our preceptors do that when they say they have a low in patient care. You know, it's not like the student's going to wait around, you know, like filing paperwork. It's, hey, this is a case study. What's wrong with it?
Yes.
Defend yourself, sort of thing, right?
Yeah. I fully believe in giving my students additional assignments. I
Like
know that's
homework.
what they want to hear, and maybe they're throwing things.
I'm almost certain one of I think like Emma, I think Madison scheduled a student with you. So if our student hears that, she's gonna be like, "Oh no, I'm gonna get homework,"
Forget her.
or no.
It will. I know they'll come back and say, thank you, because I do remember some of what was on the boards. You know, I'm not saying specifically, but I do remember how, you know, they asked questions or they phrased them, and so I can kind of give key indicators of, okay, if you see this question, how would you rule this out if you didn't know the answer? So those are some of the things that we talk about too. Because there's, you know, just test taking skills, because when the anxiety is high and you go to take that test and you kind of don't know what to expect, sometimes that can just blow it for anybody. And so practicing that, my thoughts are my reality, then you just gotta, you know, tell yourself before those tests, hey, I prepared as much as I could, and so this is where I'm at, and I'm going to take the test and do the best that I can.
We've been kicked out of the room right now. I booked it for an hour. It's been an amazing interview. In 3 words or 5 words, last question is, why do you precept?
In 5 words,
Yeah. I want to design this because our preceptors are amazing, and the fact that you do precept already is fantastic. I just want to know.
I have more than 5 words.
You get 1 sentence, but I give you 10 seconds.
Is because I believe in the autonomy of nurse practitioners. I believe in our ability to provide great service, and I want to be a part of leading the next set of nurse practitioners to believe and showcase those same things.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that.
Hey, Krish. Yeah.
This interview was phenomenal. I loved it to death. I think our students, our community is going to love it as well. And I really, really appreciate all your time today. I can't tell you, honestly, the fact that this is like the first time we're launching this interview series, the first time you're doing something like this. Hey, I'm so happy it was you. You know, like kind of like practicing and like going through the trial and error. It's been awesome. As a preceptor, thank you. As a mentor of NPHub, I really appreciate your work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate yours as well. And I'm sorry, because one of my questions wanted to be.
Oh, we have some more time. It's okay. We moved.
Out there, who need precepts. I can't even tell you how many emails I get just begging, like, please, can you help me? I have a student right now who's driving from California every week to come to Phoenix. So there are students out there that are willing to do whatever. They're just looking for those connections. So how do they get connected with you, and how can you help them?
That is phenomenal, and it's a great question. So we've been around for now a few years, right? 2 years. We were NPCR, where you can come to our nurse practitioner clinical rotations, and we help NPs around the country find rotations. We operate in about 10 to 12 different markets. If you think of any major city, we probably have rotations in, especially on the coast, right? So effectively, what they can do now that we rebranded to NPHub is to come to our website. By the time this goes live, we'll probably be nphub.com. But just type that into Google, you'll find us, you'll find our information, and all you have to do is enroll on our website. Now, the super exciting thing that we've done is over the last year, we spent a year developing an app, very similar to Airbnb, which I'm so, honestly, I can't even tell you how long it's been, right? Like, the budget is out of control. It is now, we are into the 6 figures for this development. But this app effectively allows you to find your own preceptor. So someone like you is going to have a profile on our app, no names included, but a description of your rotation, a description of your values, what do you care about in a student. And students will be able to click on your profile, be like, wow, this sounds amazing. Let me request to book it. And you're going to get a notification then via email or via text message saying the student wants to rotate with you. Here's their profile. Here's their CV. Here's their information. If this is a good fit, yes or no, based on your availability. And what allows students to do is connect with preceptors. What allows preceptors to do is control this sort of mess they get. They get emails, they get calls, they get X, Y, or Z. Honestly, Laura, I know what's going to happen, and people are going to ask you for rotations now on Facebook after this goes live. They're going to find Centric Behavioral Health, and they're going to message you saying, can you precept me? And
Sure.
it's no fault of their own. Our students are phenomenal. They're being resourceful. We teach them to be resourceful because we created a book for them to find their own rotations. It's how you do it. But
Cool.
They have to, right now, I think, to find us, just go to our website, enroll, and when our app comes out, you'll be able to find your own preceptor. And for people that are tech savvy, you can be able to have a preceptor in 20 minutes.
Very
And
cool.
one of our guarantees when we first started, like our very first student ever was a Walden student in Atlanta and needed pediatrics. She was looking for 6 months to find a rotation, which is absurd. Up to our first 10 students, it was like 2-month delay, 3-month delay. They had to sit out a semester. Some sat out a year, right? There's some schools that literally, if you sit out once, you can't take that class again until the following year. It's garbage. And this student waited 6 months. And I promised when we started the company, myself, and then I brought in my co-founder, Abhi, we promised that we would be able to help a student in 2 weeks.
Oh, cool.
And that was good for us. And now, with this app, we're now able to help certain students within 20 minutes to find a rotation. And even if it takes a day, it's a day. And now you're doing it on your own. You don't have to wait to schedule a call. You don't need to, be onboarded in terms of our system. You literally do it the way you would book a hotel on Priceline.
I love that. And let me tell you specifically why I love that. Because I have had other people who I think of some kind of, I'm not even quite sure what it is, some kind of recruiting for some students or whatever. And I've had them connect with me solely focusing on the emotion of the whole thing. And so I wrote them back and I said, I really feel like you're doing this one student a disservice because when you're asking a preceptor to precept, we already know we went through it, Mm-hmm. I mean, I drove 3.5 hours one way just to get to one of my clinical patients. So I know I had a whole notebook of people that I had called. I turned into a door-to-door saleswoman. I mean, really,
exactly. It's unfortunate we resort NP students to sales environments. Like I had sales training. Right? But you would never ask me, hey, help me diagnose my patient. But I don't know anything. But we have our students do that. Yeah. So you were saying, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, I just, the student is highly emotional and the preceptor is generally highly emotional if they feel like they can't help you out. And so it's just, I appreciate your approach and kind of taking that out of it and just saying, look, hey, we have an app. You just go on the app, you search for your person, and that's how we try to connect with already somebody who is, willing to be a preceptor. Because it's too difficult other ways, I think. So you've made it easy, and I think preceptors and students are going to love it.
I hope so. I know, our students, they'll use it because they want to work, right? Like they want something. And they want to have more control over their life. Our preceptors, we know we have a good base of them who will use it. They're excited to have this simplicity. And honestly, the thing about NPHub is when we started because we knew NP students were underserved, right? They deserve more resources. It's just, at this point, I believe it to be a fact in life. Right? They're underserved the same way they don't have the resources that PA schools provide or MD schools provide, DO programs. And that's period fact. What we didn't know, and what we really try to focus on now, is we didn't realize that NP preceptors are underappreciated, and it has nothing to do with whether or not people want a precept or not want a precept. It's about appreciating your preceptors, treating them with respect, providing them compensation, because every other preceptor gets compensation.
Yeah.
There is no reason this should exist.
Right.
No, I appreciate your advice on that one, and we're trying to give the industry what they deserve. I don't honestly like. There are days where I feel like super empowered and I'm like, this is what we're working on. There are other days where I'm just like today where this doesn't exist, but it should. And
Right.
I'm just doing what should be here. Like, that's it. You know?
Good day.
Yeah. There you go.
Starts, right?
There you go. I appreciate that a lot. So yeah, we'll wrap up this interview. Again, thank you. Awesome advice. Appreciate your time. And we'll be in touch shortly. But thank you again. And we know this is it's amazing content. So thank you.
Yes. I appreciate you, Krish, very much.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
So much love. Take care.
Bye.